ballroom dancing. Fabulous.
Well, I still keep it going as a weekly class, and I think put in for a competition in September. So I've kept going, and it's very good for physical health and mental health, actually, both.
Yeah, it's lovely, isn't it? And the music as well, so you can relax into the music, and also memory, very good for.
But most people have it in them. You hear people say, you know, I can't do that. I haven't got a right foot or a left foot. But actually, most people have a sense of rhythm and timing, and you can take it from there.
So then, talk to me about you then. Why did you get into politics? Was there a moment where you thought, OK, I want to be a politician?
Well, I wrote a book called How to Be a Politician that explains in a semi-satirical way how I and other people get launched on political careers. I think mine was a slightly odd way because my father had diametrically opposed very right-wing views. This was back in the 50s. A very strong defender of the empire and you know, Britain's intervention in Suez. And I was a teenager, and I started arguing with him. And my best friend at school was on the other extreme as a sort of communist, revolutionary, and I started arguing with him. And so I found myself in a kind of middle of the road, just debating with people who were close to me. But getting actively involved didn't really. I was at university. I was active in the Cambridge Union, so I dealt with a lot of, you know, the Ken Clarks, Norman Lamont people, my contemporaries. But I really only got engaged in political activity when I lived in Glasgow. I became a Glasgow City Councillor. I was Labour in those days. And, you know, in my 20s, sort of heavily involved in running one of Britain's big cities. So that was, you know, a real university of life experience. But then, of course, Labour had a civil war in the 80s. I split off. I joined Roy Jenkins and Shirley Williams in the SDP, and I didn't eventually become an MP till I was in my mid-50s, when a lot of people are thinking about retirement.
What do you make of the MPs at the moment and the behaviour that's going on in Parliament and the political...
Well, it's easy for people to look back and say everything's gone downhill since I left. I'm sure it's not quite like that, but of course they've been unfortunate that, of course, the pandemic totally disrupted the kind of, you know, personal back and forth intimacy that you need in Parliament. You know, it's been totally absorbed with the Brexit experience. And then, you know, continuing disruption with 3 prime ministers within a year. I mean, it's a very different environment from the one I was in, where we had 13 years of Tony Blair and Gordon Brown, which, you know, they did a lot of stuff. Some things I disagree with, like the Iraq War, but it was a stable government. It was doing stuff. And we had 5 years of the coalition that I was at the heart of, and again, another period of stable government. And since then, it's been very uneven.
What do you make of what's going on now in Russia with regard to everything that's happening? Of course, we've got...
Well, I don't think any of us really know. What we do know is there's a mutiny going on, and we also know that Putin has been sufficiently weakened by this disastrous war that his regime is now fragile. But I think we should be careful what we wish for, because if he comes out on top, you know, he'll be even more paranoid, inclined to lash out in all directions. And if the other guy, Prigozhin and his people, I mean, they're an unknown quantity, but we know he's violent and unpredictable and extreme in the way he operates. So we may be dealing with people who are even more difficult and violent and dangerous than we have in the past.
And sometimes better the devil you know, even if that devil's...
Well, I wouldn't go so far as to say we welcome it, but...
No, but you know, it's a very worrying time in the world at the moment as well, and also in the political spectrum. Looking at the political situation now, do you think it's a dead cert that the Labour Party will win the next general election?
No, it's very unpredictable. I mean, if I were going to a bookmaker, I would put money on them winning, but not with sufficient numbers to form a government. And I think we may well find ourselves with minority government, and that leaves the way open to conversations with opposition parties. It may open the way. I mean, you know, many of us remember the 1970s, where the government waits 3 months or 6 months and has a second election. We could be in that kind of scenario.
What about the Liberal Democrats? Do you see them playing any role in it? Seems they seem to sort of have dissolved. I mean, where are they? I don't hear much about them. What's going on with them? Are they still about?
I've stepped back. I've retired. I'm not a backseat driver, but I help. I was in Mid-Bedfordshire this week, giving help. I think we've a good chance of winning. I'm going to Somerton and Frome next week. So, we've won this very good sequence of by-elections. Ed Davey, I think, has got basically the right approach of just concentrating our resources on those parts of the country where we can win and Labour can't win, and returning in the next Parliament with a significantly bigger number of MPs. That seems to be absolutely the right approach. And if the SNP fall apart, as is quite likely, the Lib Dems will be back as the third party in Parliament with the kind of influence we had before 2010.